The very last thing you will need to do before closing out your course is to calculate and submit final grades for your students. There are some important factors to keep in mind when preparing to submit final grades. First, final grades can only be submitted after all assignments have been submitted and graded. If you have an assignment which is not graded, or if you have a student who has not submitted an assignment but they are still within the late submission window, you cannot submit final grades. This is because final grades can only be submitted all at once for an entire section. Second, you must submit final grades within 3 days after the date of the final exam. For Library 101, the final project takes the place of a final exam, so you have 3 days from the day final projects are due to submit grades, not including Sunday or the day the assignment is due. The 3-day rule is especially important at the end of a semester because final grades have to be posted for students who are graduating before the student's diploma can be released. Finally, course evaluations cannot be released until after all final grades have been posted. To determine final grades for your section, you will need to be in the full grade center. Throughout the semester, each graded item has been worth a certain number of points, adding up to 1,000. Lectures, for example, are worth 4.5 points. The Research Strategies assignment is worth 100 points. The reason the Research Strategies assignment is worth 100 points is that it is worth 10% of the overall grade, and 100 is 10% of 1,000. If you added up all the lectures plus the introduction quiz, you would get 100, which is the total class participation grade. Fortunately, Blackboard calculates the total number of points a student has earned throughout the course. This is the first column you see in the gradebook, all the way over on the left, named Total. Do not confuse this column with the Lecture Total column, which is immediately adjacent to it. That is there for your information, to see how many lectures a student has completed. Extra credit is already taken and added into the grade, so you don't need to make any calculations there. The easiest way to determine a student's grade is to convert the score into a percentage, so that it is simply a multiple of 100. In the example, the grade for the first student is 76.32, while the grade for the second student is 82.63. From there, convert the grade to the nearest whole number by rounding. Round up starting with the nearest decimal position, with 5 or greater indicating whether or not to round. For example, with the second student, the number in the tenths position is greater than 5. Therefore, you would round the grade to the next highest whole number, which is 83. For the first student, the digits in the tenths position is less than 5, so you move to the digit in the hundredths position. Here, the digit is not greater than 5, so you would not round up, nor would you round the digit in the tenths position. Therefore, the student's grade is rounded down to the nearest whole number, which is 76. The university uses a letter grade system for GPA rather than a 100-point scale, so you must also convert the numerical scores, 76 and 83 in our examples, to a letter grade. The university does not specify what score constitutes which letter grade, and departments are free to make their own determination of what grade is at what level. For Library 101, this is stated in the syllabus. Certain numerical scores equal specific scores in specific grades. In our example, the student whose final score was 76 received a C. The student who received a grade of 83 receives a B. However, be sure to check the syllabus each time you prepare to submit final grades because the scale may be adjusted periodically. This is where rounding and extra credit can make a difference. If the first student had completed the extra credit, the total score would have been 76.82, which, when rounded, would have given the student a grade of 77, or C+. Since the student did not complete the extra credit, it did not push the final score up enough to be subjected to rounding, and hence cannot be rounded to the next highest letter grade. There are differences in GPA between a grade of C and C+. Therefore, it is critical you assign the correct whole numerical score to each student. Note that the university does not award minus grades, such as B-, and you cannot award a grade of A+. Once you have your letter grades, you must enter them into Self-Service Carolina. Log into Self-Service Carolina using your VIP ID and your password. Once in Self-Service Carolina, navigate to the Faculty Services menu. Here you will find the Final Grades tile. Please note that, depending on your access to Self-Service Carolina, the tiles you may have access to may be in different locations. So check all of your tiles to make sure that you can access the Final Grades worksheet. When you click on the Final Grades tile, the screen may read, "The Final Grades worksheet is unavailable." In this case, you may be out of the normal grading period, you may have submitted grades for this section, or you may not have the proper section selected. To get to the proper course, go to Faculty Services and click on the CRN selection tile. Here, you will see a drop-down menu of your currently active courses. Be careful to ensure that you only select the section that you want to enter final grades for. When you have selected the correct CRN, click Submit and return to the Faculty Services menu and click the Final Grades tile once again. In Final Grades, you will see that you have a list of all students enrolled in your section. You can click the drop-down menu under Grade, and you can select the appropriate grade to provide the student, from A to F. You can also award an incomplete, or a grade which is represented by the I, or a grade of NR, which stands for no record. You won't need to award the grade of NR since it is typically reserved for courses without attendance policies or assignment deadlines, and you should award the grade of incomplete in accordance with Library 101 policies. You don't need to worry about the last date attended or hours attended column. Once you have finished entering grades, review your entries and, if everything looks correct, hit Submit. Once you have submitted final grades, be sure to send your grade summary to the coordinator. List each category and write out the numbers of each grade type earned in the course. If 5 students have earned a B+, then you would write 5 on the B+ row. If no one has earned a C+, then you would put a 0 on that row. The coordinator doesn't need to know who earned what grade, just the absolute numbers of each type earned. When you email your grade summary to the coordinator, you are finished with your section of Library 101 for the semester. Congratulations.